With Pride Month less than 2 weeks away, it's another bittersweet one in Boston. The city hasn't seen a Pride parade in almost 3 years thanks to the pandemic, and now it's not clear whether it'll ever be coming back. That's thanks in part to the organization behind the parade, Boston Pride, dissolving after more than 50 years amid complaints about the organization's all-white board of directors ignoring issues of race and transgender inclusion. Joining me are David Zimmerman, publisher of Boston Spirit magazine, and Grace Moreno, executive director of the Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to both of you. David, I want to start with you. You published an open letter to the Pride Committee in the latest issue of Boston Spirit magazine that, basically says in part, the selfishness of your act is unfathomable. For nearly a year, you worked with an outside firm on a transition plan to bring a new, more diverse board. Then, when the time came to finalize that plan, you took your books, your records, your financial documents, and you went home. What moved you to write about this now?
The fact that we were coming up to Pride Month really was the impetus behind the timing of it. And just the fact that I've been seething on this for quite some time. I mean, we in the magazine, Reverend Irene Monroe, who you know well and you've had on the show many times, wrote an article for us about what happened. And we got no answers then, and we've gotten no answers since. And as I said, I think it is unfathomable that these people took this public trust, this public institution that they don't own. They were caretakers and they were stewards. And they decided to take it away from everybody with no explanation, no reason, nothing. For 50 years, there have been Pride boards in the city of Boston, many of whom in the 70s endured physical abuse, endured emotional abuse, just went through horrible times to get this off the ground and to get it happen. That board transitioned to a new board when their time had come to an end, who transitioned to a new board. And this has been happening for decade after decade after decade, peaceful transitions. Here's our information, take it, grow it, run with it. And all of a sudden, this board, for some reason that they refused to explain, decided just to take their ball and go home.
Grace, you've been advocating with the prior Pride Committee for years regarding issues of inclusion and involvement. And I'm not looking to relitigate what happened in the past, but you have been on the ground with other community leaders trying to come together to launch a new Pride Committee. I would think personally it's harder to build a new one than it would be to work on the framework, as David's pointing out, of a board that's been passed down through generations at least. What's been your experience over the past year, and how close are we, do you think, to having a new Pride Committee?
Well, thank you. I agree with what David's saying. Basically, this group took something that didn't belong to just 5 or 6 individuals. It belonged to all of us in the community, and took their toys home. And that includes a listserv of 20,000 people that we don't have anymore, that we can't reach out to. It includes many, many assets that we don't have. The community has come together, and they're really, we've been all very intentional about making sure that we're not redoing what has happened with the last Pride. We want to be inclusive, and that includes those of us that sit in organizations of power to yield some of that power to community groups that don't have as much power as we do, right? At the Chamber, we have a different position. So it's been a lot of conversations. I got to tell you, I've sat through vacation days that I've been on meetings with folks, trying to get all the voices to the table. You start off by a segment saying we might never have another Pride. What I see is the passion in the community is that Pride will be back, and Pride will come together, because our family, the LGBTQ family, is not going to be stopped by just a group of people. It's just going to be really hard to regrow something that's been there for 50 years. Right. And so what we're doing this year is we're supporting a group at their chamber is supporting a group of community people that are doing a pop-up Pride on June 12th, Sunday, at the Boston Common. And what the pop-up Pride is doing is a lot of the folks, regular people are calling us and saying, hey, what can I do? Can I volunteer? Can I give you $20? Can I give you $40 to get this going? The mayor has been very involved and has been very supportive in finding a space and getting us the things we need to do it. So we're going to have something. We're going to come together on June 12th at the Boston Common. It's not going to be as wonderful and as beautiful as it's been in the past. But what we're hopeful for is that it's going to give the community an opportunity to do some healing, to come together and to start anew. We still have hope because the assets have not been turned over to the Attorney General's office from the old Pride Committee. So we still have hope that there will be some justice there and that they will at least turn over the listserv that would be very helpful in being able to reach people.
David, has anybody from the Pride Committee responded to you regarding your letter?
They have not. And as you know, another part of that letter, what I did is offered them open space in the magazine, unedited. We would not touch their words. They could run a letter in the magazine explaining why they did what they did. Tell us why. And I do think that the lack of diversity issue on the board was an absolute problem. There is no question about it. And it was an issue. I do not think, however, that had anything to do with why the board shut down and took everything and went home.
What do you think happened then? What are you implying?
One person's opinion, but the only reason I can think is that they just didn't want anybody to see what was in their books.
Where are they in terms of, and Grace, maybe you know this answer, they are legally obligated to disperse that monies, from my understanding from reading the law, they to other organizations that are like-minded to them. Is there a time frame on when that has to happen?
We've had some conversations with the Charities Department and the Attorney General's office, and I've asked those questions. One of the things that I understand is that the Attorney General's office has to validify or sign off on the charity closing. And one of those stipulations is that it's no longer needed in the community, which is not the case here with Pride. Now more than ever, we need Pride to exist so that we can continue to bring our community together around the issues that are important to us and from an advocacy perspective. The other piece is that they have to go through an entire review with the Attorney General's office to be able to be allowed to close down. My conversation with the Charities Department of the Attorney General's office was, well, it's clearly still a need, and there's clearly still other people who want to lead. I myself will put myself into, the last thing I need to be is on a board of Pride, but I will do it for a year to transition it to the right people. And there are other leaders like David and others who would step up and serve to make it get to the next place, and then hand it over to an equitable board that could be supported by the community. But apparently that's not, I don't know what's happened since then. I think it's unfortunate because by this time, they've given away all the bullhorns and the tables and, on all the various places, but there's still assets there. And apparently the money dwindled away. Apparently the money, I think David has some point there in saying, there's something that people didn't want us to see. And whatever that is hurting the community.
Well, I would reiterate what David said. Certainly folks from the Boston Pride Committee are welcome to talk to me or to either one of you, to Bay Windows, to Boston Spirit Magazine, to rebut this. David, I want to talk to us as business people. You're the publisher of Boston Spirit Magazine. I'm the co-publisher of Bay Windows. Grace, you are with the Chamber of Commerce. There's been challenges, and I work at NBC, which has been a media sponsor of the prior Boston Pride. There have been challenges regarding the corporate aspect and the business aspect of Pride, not just here in Boston, but sure, around the area. And I would also note there are a number of prides happening in Massachusetts that just aren't Boston, which you can see at Boston Spirit Magazine has a listing, and we'll have one as well. Are we at a point, an inflection point, David, where we have to balance the corporate sponsorship of these Pride events and the civil rights aspect of what Pride originally meant?
That is exactly where we are. That is exactly where we are. Boston Spirit, Bay Windows has been around longer, so you actually even have more of a history, at least in this part, than I do. We've been around for 17 years. Without question, the biggest change that we've seen over that 17 years is corporate involvement in diversity, inclusion, and equity. It has become a big budget item in every major company. And these companies have their employee resource groups dedicated to different niches of employees. They have their LGBT groups, Asian American groups, women groups, veteran groups, and so forth and so on. All of these groups get budgets and they get visibility. Corporations are trying, at least from the visibility part, to do the right thing with regard to D&I. But when you look at where Pride started, in the activism behind it, in the social and community part of it, and where you look at the Pride Parade was 3 years ago, the Pride Parade took about 4 hours, and you were broadcasting it, and it was one company after another company after another company after another, which is wonderful, but as you said, there's a tipping point, and a lot of people are angry and seeing it as a much more of a corporate entity than a social and an activism entity. And yes, that is an issue, and it's a very, very difficult one to balance, because I do think everybody is trying in part to do the right thing.
Grace, as we wrap up here, I want to give you the last word. If people are interested in getting involved, or they want to get more information, or they want to put pressure on the prior Pride committee, what can they do?
Well, I think there's two things right now. I think, as David just said, there's the corporate piece, and I think that this new Pride wants to include everybody, but there's also some reckoning that we've had to come to with the corporate sector around what does it really mean to be inclusive? You can't just slap your name on the front of this event and say you're inclusive and then not hire LGBTQ people or support trans people in the work or donate to our cause or even fight against us when there's legislation in the federal government or locally. If you really are a supporter, you really need to be a supporter. And at our chamber, we make sure that everybody who's a corporate partner signs on to being socially responsible and bring equity to the LGBT community. The other is we need people to show up on June 12th. People need to come out and bring their picnic baskets, picnic blankets, and be a part of the change that we want to see. And I think that, there's Pop-Up Pride has a website. You can come to our chamber and we'll have it, the Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce website, and we'll have it there for, I don't have it now to give to you, but we have one. And donate $20 because we're having to fund this ourselves. We're not going for corporate money this year. We're going through foundations, individuals, and then the rest of the LGBTQ nonprofits are pitching in to make it happen.
All right, we'll leave it there. I thank you both for your involvement. David Zimmerman, Grace Moreno, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you.